Hey TCSTV viewers and Sport Calgary members, it is Evelyn Drake coming to you live from the camera store, and today we have a very special Sports Photography 101 seminar with Calgary-based Olympic and Paralympic sport and athlete photographer Dave Holland, who I'm going to introduce shortly. But before we do, I want to share some information with you guys about this first collaboration that we're having with Sport Calgary. And this is thanks to Becca Gold, Sandra Pierre, and Katrina Le-May-Don, and the rest of the team. Sport Calgary is a volunteer non-for-profit society representing over 300 sports organizations in the greater Calgary area as a civic partner. As an advocate for sport, Sport Calgary strives to assist, support, and influence the growth of sport in Calgary. The organization is best known for hosting its annual All Sport One Day and All Sport One Day City, which are events that provide opportunities for Calgarians of all ages and walks of life to try out a brand new sport for free. I think that's very cool, and we were excited to do this collaboration with them. Of course, today's presentation is live, which means that anything can happen, but we have the TCSTV live dream team with us, making sure everything goes on without a hitch, and that includes Drew, Jeff, and Riley working behind the scenes today from the camera store. So thanks to all of them for all their hard work as always. And the best part about these live events is being able to interact with all of you, the audience. And so please be sure to put all of your questions that you have for Dave in the comments, and we'll get to them throughout the presentation. If you're not logged into YouTube, we also have the option for you to email me live during the event, and my email address is evelyn@thecamerastore.com, and so you can use both those methods to ask questions and have them answered. Now I'd like to welcome Sport Calgary's president and CEO, Katrina Le-May-Don, who's been known as the fastest woman on ice. She was a two-time Olympic champion in speed skating and is the chef de maison for the upcoming Beijing 2022 Olympic Games that are happening in February, if you can believe it or not. Welcome, Katrina.
We're getting no sound. Yeah, we're getting no sound. Yep.
Okay.
Any way you can pause her?
Katrina, just hold 1 second. I guess your audio is not coming through. Just one moment.
Try again.
Okay, just do a quick test. You guys getting your audio?
No, just cut out. Is she muted at her end?
Should I? Oh. Here, this is what I'll unmute on this machine, and she can go through my mic.
Go for it.
I'm unmuted. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you. For some reason, it's not coming through the system. So go ahead, Katrina. Sorry about that, guys.
No, sorry, everybody. Can you guys hear me now okay?
Yeah.
No? Okay. I was just saying welcome. I was just saying that we're actually under 130 days to Beijing. On behalf of Sport Calgary, I want to thank everybody for joining us. Thank you to Evelyn, the entire team at the camera store. Thank you to Dave Holland. This is a great opportunity for everybody, and thank you for the collaboration. We know through the last year and a half how tough it's been on everybody with the pandemic in every walk of life, in all parts of our life, but especially in sport, because sport has been taken away from us. So whether it's youth, whether it's adult, we have missed sport. And so we hope, we're crossing our fingers that we're coming out of the pandemic, and we need sport. We know that sport's going to be a huge part of our recovery, from the physical side, from the social side, from the mental side. We need sport in order to be healthy again. So thanks to the team. Thanks for this collaboration that we can learn about sport photography. I have worked with Dave on various occasions, witnessed his work. He is brilliant. So we're not thinking that everybody's going to get to his level right away, but getting some tricks on how to promote sport, because we know that that's the key. We need to promote sport. We need to continue to push sport. So I encourage everybody, make sure that sport is something that you continue to talk about, sport at every single level. It's going to be key for our recovery. It's going to be key for us to be a healthy and a successful community. Thanks again to the camera store, the entire team there. Thanks to Dave, and thanks to the Sport Calgary team for also coordinating. So, Evelyn, I'm going to turn it back over to you, and enjoy the time. I can't wait to listen.
Thank you, Katrina. And now, of course, I'd like to introduce our guest who's going to provide us the goods today on Sports Photography 101. He works with Canada's best elite athletes, maybe not an elite athlete, I don't know. Maybe you can tell us, Dave, on a daily basis. But he also recently returned from shooting the Tokyo Olympics, the Paralympics, and of course is quickly preparing for the Beijing 2022 Olympics. So welcome, Dave.
Hi, thank you.
Thanks for coming. So before we get into some of your photos and some tips for better sports photography for all of our viewers, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into doing sports photography.
It was a bit of a journey for me. I did it in high school back in the day, Canon AE1 to start with, and being part of the camera club, it was, you got your film, you got your developing, you got your darkroom, you got all that stuff for free. And then when I finished school, it was like, well, I can't afford all that. So I put the camera down. And then in 2008, I went on a 5-month trip and picked up the camera. It was my companion for travel, so I kind of fell in love with it again. 2009, I started just showing up at events and shooting bobsleigh and elite amateur events, and took off from there.
Fantastic. So you've been doing this a very long time, and of course the world of cameras and photography has changed so much. The camera store just celebrated our 25th anniversary as well. But maybe you can tell us a little bit about what it was like for you as a photographer starting out in sports photography when you were in high school, and like what's the difference in terms of the equipment that you have to use?
Oh, it's night and day. I remember we went on a family trip to New York, and I think it was B&H, it had to be B&H Photo, that I went and bought my first sport lens, which was a Tamron 70 to 350 or something like that, but it was a f5 to f8 or something like that, and I thought it was the greatest thing ever, but I mean, it wasn't a super fast lens or anything, but it made it work, and just did photos with the yearbook, and that was it.
Why don't you show us some of those pictures that you had?
Well, this is where I am now. So this is where I've gotten to, is working with the elite athletes based at at CSI Calgary, which is, for lack of a better term, an Olympic training center. That was one of my favorite photos from high school. It was getting set up for the women's volleyball team photo, and that was it. I found that old paper print down in the basement one day and thought, oh, I'll scan it and throw it up. So, but that was it. I mean, the photography wasn't great by any stretch. I mean, it's much like you'd expect from any yearbook from that time. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it was just fun to do.
So how important is it for you with your work to really have a good understanding of the different sports that you shoot? I know you're heavily involved with the Sports Institute, so can you talk about what those relationships are in terms of being impactful to your work?
Well, the variety of the sport just is infinite help. You learn different things, you learn different systems, where to be, how to approach sports, because even though you can go to a World Cup for skiing, it's completely different than going to a World Cup for hockey. So where you can go, what you can shoot, how you have to be prepared to be in position for skiing, for example, an hour ahead of time out on the course. So if you want to shoot it, you have to go hours ahead to figure out where you want to shoot, go get your gear, and then go back up the lift and get back into position an hour ahead. Whereas hockey, you can show up in the second period or the third period, you can come and go, you can move around. But in a lot of cases, in most cases, it's all different.
And what do you think is the best way to learn what are different athletic movements and things that the athletes will find important for you to capture?
Study the best. Like if you look at the great photographers that are out there, they will never put a bad photo up. Sometimes they may not all understand the technique. Like the great sport photographers will know how to shoot a sport. Some of the finesse, like if they're shooting yoga and somebody will say, oh, my foot's not just right, or my wrist isn't right. The actual composition of the photo will be great, but that's where you learn from the athletes. That's where you learn from the pros. You show, or the pros, rather the coaches and the people who are involved in the sport themselves. Those are the ones who will know the good form. So it's nice to build those relationships too. Just show the athletes and go, yeah, no, that's great. Or, ooh, not so good.
Can we take a look at some of your work and just talk a little bit about the composition of some of these photos?
I don't think I have a ton of action photos in here. These are some from around. The top two are from Winsport. So that's that's two-man luge, I think, or single luge. The top right one is a detail shot. That's Mikhail Kingsbury's lid. He just keeps winning Crystal Globes, World Cups. He's Olympic champion. The bottom two are from Sochi, from the Paralympics. When you look at those, they're both from virtually the same spot. The one on the left is with a low with a long lens, or with a wide lens, and the one on the right is backed way up, compressed to background with a long lens. So there's a lot of different things you can do with just composition like that. But finding them right in the right light, finding them in a good stride, that's all part of it.
And actually, let's touch on the compression thing that you mentioned there with bringing that background, the mountains, a little bit closer to the subject matter. So before we got started on the stream today, we talked about a little bit about gear and how, you know, a lot of people can get great sport photos no matter what type of equipment you're using. So if you're someone that's shooting sports and you're using a phone because you're on the sidelines, maybe you're watching your child in sports or someone that you know, you can absolutely get great shots. But an image like that where you're talking about compression and bringing that background closer, that's something where you would require a proper camera setup. Is that right? Yeah,
longer lens, because the longer lenses bring the background much, much closer. So if you see images like that, or like a lot of people will shoot city images where the buildings are right there, that's usually a long lens, like a 200 minimum, maybe a 400 or even more. But the longer the lens, the more it'll compress and really bring that background up. Conversely, with a wide angle lens, you get low and you get wide, and it brings everything out. So yeah, lots of sky. The two on the left are probably 14 millimeter shots. I can't live without my 14 millimeter.
Yeah, well, here, let's take a quick look at them just one more time here for the viewers. Yeah, I mean, I love the compositional elements that you have here. Can you talk about just some of the things with gear aside that you look for when composing a good sport photo?
Well, there's three basic things. Peak action. So knowing where in the stride, where in the action is the best form. Clean backgrounds. Get obsessive about clean backgrounds. No porta potties, parked cars, construction, that kind of thing. And then good light. So you see the top left one, I just waited until they were in that little light beam and get the photo from there. So those are the three critical things that I think. Peak action, clean backgrounds, and good light.
Cool. Well, let's take a look at a few more photos here.
Well, these ones are more special moment ones. The top left one, I hashtagged that one Olympic kissy face, and it got reused by the Olympics on Instagram. They loved it, but that was just being there. That was a longer lens. I was sitting in the stands during a training session. I was actually cutting through to catch a bus and saw that. So that's Evany, and now her husband. They're local. Top right was an awards ceremony. It was, that was good. You know, when you see the emotion I mean, the lighting there is fine, but you still need to get in a good spot to get the Olympic rings where you want them. The bottom right was, if you stay long enough, good things will happen. So this is just after Alex won a bronze medal in Pyeongchang. So she's the one in the skin suit in the middle with the little teddy bear. That was Canada's first ever medal in luge, and they've been through a lot. In Sochi, they finished 4th in everything. The team event got bumped up to 3rd because Russia got sanctioned, and then the Court of Arbitration overturned that, and they got 4th again. So it's been a rocky road for them. But to have a special moment and to be there for that, and to know these people, because I know every one of them, and for them to go, Dave, let's get a group photo. I mean, that's been used so many times by luge. It's great. And yeah, and then bottom left is just some of the regular work I did with the Calgary Inferno, the women's professional hockey league team that was here. Just being around and getting to know the athletes and getting the most out of them.
Nice. Now, when it comes to capturing peak action, what do you do as a sports photographer to anticipate some of those moments and maybe time your shots? Or do you find that you're, now with the new technology, are you finding yourself a little bit heavier on the trigger? What's your process there?
Some people will be heavy on the trigger. It depends on experience and confidence, really, is when you shoot. But I tend to be a little bit more disciplined with it because I shoot RAW, and with the new A1, it's 50 megapixels. I don't want to fill up my cards and drives that quickly. So, and I have to edit them. I don't have a desk guy. So it's mostly just experience. Watch the sport, understand where the peak action is going to happen. Like in slalom skiing, you're going to hit a gate. That's the shot you want. You don't want them switching weight in between the gates. So it's basically shoot this gate, shoot that gate, shoot this gate, shoot that gate. So a lot of the same thing with speed skating is picking the spot in the track where either you're going to get the crossover or you're going to get them in a straightaway. I mean, all the shots are valid, but there's a point where they extend, and that's usually a nice shot. But like to figure out the sports, you just have to take your time and watch. Like even if you know the sports, the courses are always different, right? Hockey is one thing, but when you go to a luge competition, every track is different, and they'll be higher in the track in some places than others. So that's where you want to get that, plus the accessibility of getting into that spot.
We have a question here from Alexander Payton from Triathlon, Alberta, about being stuck with nothing but an iPhone at some of these events. Can you talk a little bit about positioning yourself if you're kind of limited by the focal length of your phone, or if you just have a basic camera setup? What should you do?
Just try and find what you want to convey, right? Because there's different kinds of photos. There's action, but there's also a sense of place. There's the environment. Like if you end up in a place like Tokyo, the triathlon was on Tokyo Bay with the Rainbow Bridge in behind. So all you have to do is decide, well, do I want, them running across a logo in the middle of the track? Because the Tokyo signage is everywhere. And there were some good spots right at the finish where you could get them running through the big Tokyo with, the 0.5 on your iPhone. Or you can do the ×2 on your iPhone and line them up with the Rainbow Bridge, which also makes a great shot. Really the only difference with an iPhone and a lot of the cameras is just the resolution. But if you're shooting outside during the day, the resolution is pretty good.
Another question here in the chat, and thanks everyone for bringing these questions to our attention. Keep them coming if you think of anything else throughout. But Ray Marnock is asking, how do you freeze an athlete in focus with a blurred background to get that kind of motion effect? That's
a factor of the lens. The big white lenses that you see everybody using, or if you're Nikon, they're black. But you pay for the size of it. So the bigger the lens, usually the lower the f-stop. And the closer they get to you, that's what will blur the background. So having your lens wide open and having them closer to you will blur the background more. And yeah, the longer the lens, a 600 will blur a little bit more than a 400. Wide angles are really hard to blur just because there's that much more depth of field.
And
I hope that helps.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's great. Another question from Chris Austin. For your post-shooting workflow, this is where he finds his biggest holdup. So as far as processing 1,500 images from a 4 to 6 hour cricket match, what do you do to speed up your process?
A lot of it depends on how much you have to caption and how much you have to cover. For a cricket match, I would try and cover everybody, and then some key moments, and do some fun shots like a wide angle of the stadium. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you shoot, you're going to have a lot of photos, especially if you shoot in RAW. So I use a program called Photo Mechanic, which is great. It's kind of a news photographer's program that's good for selecting and editing. It's cheap, but it's $150, I think. Last time I bought it, it's around there. But it's a huge time saver because you can select photos just by clicking T and the right arrow. So that's your first cut. You T, that'll tag the photos. Then you take the ones that you have, you can caption them if you need to. You can use generic captions, and then from those you take the selected ones and load them into Lightroom. Because if you're shooting RAW and you load everything into Lightroom, it takes forever. So what I do is I pre-select things with Photo Mechanic. It's a huge time saver. And there's other benefits to Photo Mechanic as well. You can pre-set up captions and a thing called code replacements. There's a Photo Mechanic wiki online that has all that information about code replacements. But it's great for team sports because all you have to do is enter the number in and it will populate who the athlete is, where they're from, whatever you want to say about them.
All right, and Racquetball Canada has a good question, very specific to their sport. So for squash or anything where action shots are taken through glass, so if you're stuck kind of behind the glass, do you have any tips for dealing with reflections or glare?
Yeah, get right up on the glass. I have a little rubber lens hood that you can put around the lens, and it's like a giant suction cup, and you just stick it on, and that takes the glare out of the back. Try and find a darker background, wear dark clothes, but the key is get close. And even if it's just a towel, like a black towel or anything black, I've seen people use tin foil. That's the big key, is to get close and right up on the glass and just make sure that all the glare is taken care of.
Awesome. And this actually brings me to a question that I had about safety. Now, of course, sometimes I know sports photographers, they get in the zone, they want to get to where the action is, and maybe people that don't have as much experience might put themselves or the athletes in dangerous positions. Can you talk a little bit about safety and some of the key tips that you have about preventing some serious situations from happening?
It's your comfort with the sport and how well you know it. Like working with high performance athletes, I trust them more than anybody, and I've been, inches from the edge of the half pipe, and they're fine because they know you're there. You just don't move and they'll go around you. With more amateur athletes or less experienced athletes, that's where it's a little trickier. So I'd give them a little bit more leeway. Find a spot that's not in an accident-prone zone. Like in speed skating, there's two corners where they crash, and that's coming out of the turns. So try not to set up there, or if you do, make sure you're back. If you're on your own, just play it safe. If you're with a bunch of other people, just follow what they do. If it's a higher event, somebody will tell you not to stand there. Or it'll be roped off. But if you don't know, watch the sport first and see where people are crashing. Usually if it's a sanctioned event, a lot of times the less skilled athletes will go first, and you'll be able to see them bail and know where some of the safer and less safe places are.
Okay, and then for some of the newer photographers, how are some of the ways that you can get access into events? Like what is a way that you can really get yourself in those kind of key positions?
Well, it depends on the level of the event. There's some events, if you just want to go shoot sports, like the Calgary Marathon just happened recently, you can just show up on the side of the course with your camera.
It was actually just outside our door here.
Yeah.
a couple of weekends ago.
There's always some events that are around. It's just a matter of sniffing around and seeing what's happening. But a lot of times, if they're out on the roads or in the public, you can just go and shoot. If you want to go down to the river when it's a nice day and shoot rafters, that's perfectly fine. It's the higher the event that usually requires more application. So a lot of times, like if it's a high school football game, go talk to the coach, go talk to the head official, somebody. Just let them know that you're there so they know to keep an eye out for you. If it's World Cups, there's a media accreditation process that you have to go through, and even higher up, if it's an international thing, a lot of times you will have to register in advance, like with the ISU, the International Skating Union. You need to be in there. Same thing for biathlon. You're registered within their system, and FIFA, and then the Olympics, that's a whole other ball of wax. So
fantastic. And our friends at Sport Calgary are in the chat as well, and they had a great suggestion that you can always volunteer as an event photographer for Sport Calgary's all sport events. And I know we did a call out on our blog for that. And so if that's something you're interested in, yeah, just look and see where you can get involved. I know there's a lot of volunteer opportunities around the city, normally all the time.
That's actually a great way to get to know some of the sports too, because if it's all sports, they will be a version of the sport at a higher level, right? So if you're shooting fencing, it's fencing. It's just the quality of the athletes and the age of them, but it's still the same sport. So you can learn how the events work there. It's a great place to start, yeah.
Right on. Can we see a few more photos before we get into some more questions? We have lots of great questions coming in the feed, which we'll get to again shortly, but I just love to see some more of Dave's awesome work here.
Well, when you're talking about access, there are some things like this gets back to the safety. This was at the World Cup in Calgary for speed skating. This is the actual crash zone, and people are leaving their cameras there, and it's not great because it won't be good for your gear, and it certainly won't be good for them. But not all access is, like, getting on the field of play is great, but it's not always perfect. These are all from either Sochi or Pyeongchang. And these are all shot from the stands. So there's a lot of times you get a way better angle from somewhere else. These photos are also almost all Olympic ones. So top left is the Moguls World Cup that's held here pretty much annually. I don't think it's coming this year. But that's a public event. You can just come in with your camera and try shooting moguls. It's not the hardest sport to shoot. All the ones in the middle, they're all shot from public spaces too. It's just a matter of trying to figure out what you want. And then top right was figure skating in Vancouver. I think that was trials in 2018 before Pyeongchang. That's just a multiple exposure in camera. So learn to play with your cameras and have some fun. But you don't need great cameras for any of these photos. You can work with what you have. Because the light is generally good. A lot of them are outdoors, so the light's always readily available.
The sun's always there.
Yeah.
Okay, we have some burning questions here for you, Dave. So one is from John, actually. I think it was on Facebook he was asking. So we're getting questions from all over the place. What are photographers using for hockey and net cams these days? The 15mm fisheye by Canon Nikon used to be legendary, but now everyone's switching to mirrorless. Is there a small lens like the 15mm or something that you could use with an adapter?
That's what I use. I had,
Perfect.
I wonder if I still have the photo here of my 15mm one. Anyways, that's what I still use. I use the Sigma MC11 adapter with the Canon 15mm. It's still brilliant because most of the ones coming out now, like the Canon 8-15, it's so big that it doesn't fit in a lot of the net cams. So I still use that with the Sony mirrorless. I haven't checked out Bruce Bennett's site lately. He's the guy that made them all. I think he's still making them, but the net cam is the box and then the camera inside and then the transmitters for those who don't know. But Yeah, it's still the same technology. It's a piece of glass in front of a box and whatever you can fit in there. But I found the 15 millimeters to be one of the best lenses that I've ever used. I had 4 or 5 of them. I've destroyed 3, I think, now, like on field of play. One was in a net cam. It got shot right to the face of it, so it's gone. I had another 15 millimeter under a rail in slopestyle skiing, and the first girl that came down just sheared the lens right off the camera.
Wow.
So if you can find them, keep them, because they're great lenses.
There is a question here in the chat. I didn't see who it was from, but it was about insurance. Is that something that you do to protect yourself from an insurance perspective, or your gear? Is that something that is required with a lot of events?
It is. A lot of most recently, a lot of organizations will want insurance, like general liability. I have $2 million. So I have a photographer's package. You can find them here and there. I can't remember who mine is through. I got it through MPAC. But I always have insurance, especially going overseas. Everything's insured. I've never used it, but you know, working with people, it's a good idea to have, and then covering your gear, it's you know, a great thing to have. Just read the fine print in it though, because my insurance won't cover my stuff if it's stolen from a car, so don't leave it in there.
Very specific.
It's gone, yeah.
Yeah, and actually these insurance writers, they're not maybe as expensive or hard to get as you think. And actually my husband and I have one too, just through a regular insurance company. So if you are shooting and you're working with people, it's definitely something that is highly recommended. A couple other questions here from Daniel Zapp we have here, that he sees you shooting Sony mirrorless cameras in Lima in 2019. I just wanted to know what that change was like for you, going from Canon DSLR to mirrorless cameras, and how that's affected your workflow.
Hi Daniel, welcome to Calgary. Switching from Canon to Sony was expensive, but worth it for me. I know that the Canon R series are coming out, and all their lenses are coming out, and they've got a cool new dual fisheye thing coming out. But regardless of whatever system you're using, mirrorless is happening. You can't stop it. DSLRs will become obsolete, and everybody's going to have to come out with new lenses to fit those cameras. So the change is inevitable. It's just it's a good time if you want to decide on what to use. It's a good time to play and try different things. So the Sony, I love it. I've never looked back. You know, I'm glad to see that Canon's keeping up. I'm not sure what Nikon's doing these days, but yeah, it's interesting times for sure.
Absolutely.
Workflow wise, not much has changed. It's just, you know, the big thing is keeping up with updates for Lightroom and Photo Mechanic, because a lot of times with a new camera, the drivers won't be behind it. So you get there and it's like, well, we can't see your images on Photo Mechanic, or Lightroom won't be able to process them until Adobe catches up. So there's a little bit of that, you know, leading edge type stuff that's problematic, but they usually keep up pretty well now.
Yeah, we should probably also mention for people that are getting new into mirrorless cameras in particular, that firmware updates are always coming down the line, and to make sure that you always have the latest firmware, because you might unlock some new features or better technology in your camera. So just like you need to update your software, also update your cameras. We have a question here about releases and permissions. This is from Ray Marnock, about if you're shooting a public event and you're taking photos maybe for Instagram or for whatever else you want to use it for, do you get model releases for that, or when would you need to?
The only time I ever worry about model releases is when it's going to be used for commercial purposes. Editorial, you're fine to shoot, especially in public. You can shoot whatever you want and nobody can really complain. I've never had problems with it at all. Even same goes for the Olympics, is like it's editorial use, so you're free to use whatever images you capture. There's a photography acknowledgement that you have to sign when you get there, but that mostly has to do with video use. But yeah, generally, if you're doing commercial things, then yes, model releases are usually a good thing. Or working with minors. A lot of times that'll be one time when you want somebody to sign off and say yes. So a lot of times if I'm shooting events at WinSport with kids, they will have kids sign off like a photo release ahead of time. So it's always good to ask the organization if that's built into the agreement with the athlete or with the participant. Like at the Sport Institute, the athletes sign that when they sign up. So I can just hang out with them and shoot away.
Awesome. Jessica Joss wants to know, what's it like being able to shoot color coming from a time when there was only black and white? Nice question.
Yeah, it's
Poor Dave.
well, it's like I always tell Leafs fans, maybe you'll get to see them win in color sometime, right? But I don't know. I still love black and white. When I do my training photos, they're always in black and white because it's the gritty part. And then when they're in competition, it's always in color because that's, you know, the spotlight of it. But the black and white, I think is, if you do it right, it's a great medium for sure.
All right. Changing gears a little bit. Do you have any tips for how to shoot swimming and swimming athletes? I don't know if you have any examples.
No, I don't have a
No?
swimming example. I'm not the biggest swimming fan. But no, because normally the only time I shoot it is at the games. So you're stuck in one spot and it's just back and forth and back and forth. Especially if you're on the pool deck, you can't move. So you're there the entire session. But usually it's, I find the smallest foot tracking middle spot that I can and lock it onto the athlete. Because really all you're ever going to see is this much of them coming out of the water. For some of the events like the breaststroke and butterfly, if you can get a head-on spot, that's great, because that's the classic one. So if you have the freedom to be able to do that, but it's just practice. It's like anything. You're going to burn some shots. Your camera's going to focus on water. When it locks on to the athlete, it'll be great. But it's practice and finding the right spot to be in the rink. Or in the pool.
And I will give a shout out to a lot of the camera manufacturers that are just becoming so amazing with their tracking autofocus and being able to find heads even if they're wearing goggles, or now they're even taking into account face masks and things like that. So as technology improves, that kind of sport is just going to become easier and easier to nail those shots.
Face recognition works with small goggles. Like with big ones, like for skiing, it doesn't always work, but it'll still grab on. Yeah, it's amazing.
What about for mountain environments? You had some skiing examples here before, dealing with snow and kind of like that high contrast situation when you get a lot of glare.
I always shoot manual in the mountains. Like I've shot a lot of biathlon and skiing and snowboarding and that kind of thing. I shoot manual because if you set it, your camera wants to read 18% gray, so if you just leave it to auto exposure, your snow will be 18% gray. So I always overexpose by 1 2/3 stop or 2 stops just till the blinkies start showing up, the highlight alert on your camera, and then that exposure is usually really good, and then that will get them against trees in the air, completely against snow, and the exposure will be great. Dealing with snow is another ball of wax. You go through batteries faster, you get snow into everything. So I always bring lots of towels. You can bring plastic bags to keep stuff in, especially if you're going from really cold to really to inside. Sometimes I put my cameras in a giant plastic bag to keep the condensation off of them as they slowly warm up. Pocket warmers, spare gloves, all those things I always just bring with me. But the other thing too is if you're shooting in the mountains, make sure that you know what you need to get around. Like FIS regulations for alpine skiing require you to have crampons, and they can kick you off the hill if you don't have them. A lot of times you don't need to wear them, but you have to have them. So know that you're not going to be a liability on the hill, being that guy tumbling down the course. But yeah, otherwise it's try and keep stuff as warm as you can, keep it as dry and clean as you can, and yeah, just keep it bundled up in your bag.
Awesome. We have a question from Rachel Wu, who says she's a high school student right now and volleyball season is upon us. And she wanted to know if you had any tips for capturing high action shots for things like volleyball when you're getting spikes and dives. What's some ways to capture that?
Volleyball, I find one of the toughest sports to shoot. If you can get up a little bit higher and shoot at the net from above, always makes good photos because they're coming at you head on. Shooting from the side is always good, but from the team that you want, you can get spikes coming. Like the team that you want, if you shoot from their side, then you'll get more action because you can get them spiking, but you can also just quick pivot and you can get them doing their digs and serves. So it's much easier to capture the team that you want when you're on their side of it.
Okay. We had a question from Dee, and I know some of our team have actually kind of jumped in and answered it. But when it comes to someone that's new to photography, maybe they've mostly shot with a smartphone, do you have any suggestions on like what's the first camera setup, what kind of lens they should maybe look at to help them with their sports photography?
I always defer, first thing I always ask people is, what do you want to shoot and what's your budget? And that will pretty much dictate what you're able to get. But you know, there's so many good cameras now, like some of the Sony like A6600s or whatever they are, they're great, and I know lots of sports photographers that use it. But what I would do is go and defer to the people that sell cameras. Like my guy Jeff, he's always here. He's always helping.
Hey Jeff.
Hey Jeff. So he'll tell me everything I need to know about a camera, because I still don't know the difference between the R and the S with the Sonys and what's better for video and what's better for, you know, it's. He tells me what to buy.
I have a little secret, a little plug I have to share is if you are in Calgary, we have our Try Before You Buy program for a lot of the brands. So we will actually give you a free rental to try it out for a few days. So if you have a game or something like that you want to experiment, our team will hook you up and you can try out some gear. So that might be something to take advantage of while you're still deciding. Chris Austin, this is a good question, and I know you have a slide in here because it made me laugh, about keeping your hands warm in the extreme cold, and also, I'm going to add on to that, protecting your gear as well.
I just went away from that slide. In the extreme cold, keep it, like I struggle with this all the time. I just bought some heated socks for skiing, for Alpine this year, because I'm going to be out at Lake Louise quite a bit. And there's also boot covers, but it's dress in layers. If you can get the heated mitts, that's great. If you can get the pocket warmers, stick them inside your jacket and then put your batteries in there, because that'll keep the batteries going a lot longer. Same thing with a laptop. If you don't have to bring it with you out onto the course or outside, leave it in a locker inside, the battery will last infinitely longer. Because especially computer batteries just die in the cold. I don't know. I just dress in layers. I use merino wool stuff. I use icebreaker. Dress in layers, and you know, you always get cold. Like cameras will freeze when you get to a certain point, but they're actually really good these days. Rarely happens that I have a camera freeze.
Another tech question from Duncan McFarlane about, since you shoot RAW, do you worry about white balance in camera?
I leave everything on auto white balance. Unless I'm going for a specific look, like a artsy sunset look, then I'll boost up the color temperature, but I just leave everything in auto white balance. If I really need, I have one of those passport color checkers. So if I really need to get the white balance dialed in, but the only time it's a problem, like if you're shooting gymnastics and it's against a blue background, everything will warm up. So there are only a few occasions where I've found that it's a problem, but otherwise, for most of the stuff that I do, I just leave it in auto. Like if you really want to, like if you're shooting hockey, after the ice is scraped up a bit, just take a photo of that and then you can use that for setting your white balance. You just go into post and get the eyedropper and find something that's a little bit gray, and that usually works great.
All right, so I think we have time for a few more questions. So if you guys have anything else left, drop them in the chat here. I know there's one from Chat Goodard asking about video. So a lot of photographers are kind of becoming these hybrid users where they do photography and they do video. Are you finding there to be a need for that for you?
Hi, Chad. I've started doing a lot more video just because it's so much more accessible now. With the Sonys, I have, with the top dial, I have my manual, and then I have 1, 2, and 3, and then there's usually a video mode, and I just leave it set, and every once in a while, if something cool is going, I'll just throw it in there. It's a learning experience for me. I have not a lot of use for video, but I'll take the camera into the gym with me all the time and just try different things if it looks cool. So I'm slowly building up a library, slowly learning my mistakes, what works, what doesn't work. And, you know, I'm dabbling right now in picture profiles. So learning how to color grade those is a whole new world. But I am doing much more video. You'll get a request for much more video. You know, if you just leave it in the regular in-camera processing, it works great for quick stuff. But yeah, more and more I'm using it, and more I'm getting comfortable with it.
Awesome. Well, before we let you go, can we look at a few more photo samples and maybe talk about just some of the creative things that you've been doing in terms of projects when you have the time? I know you've been super busy and are going to be very busy getting ready for Beijing, but what would you normally do to keep yourself inspired and creative?
I'm lucky. A lot of people have personal projects that are outside of what they shoot. My personal projects all involve the athletes, right? It's just finding new ways to showcase them. So every once in a while I will do an open studio where I will just set up backdrops, lights, all that kind of stuff, and invite athletes in to get whatever they need. I do it for free. They come, they get sponsor photos, headshots, whatever they need to promote themselves and use on social. One I keep meaning to do is a photo series on Olympic rings, Olympic ring tattoos. So, because that's usually one of the first things that the athletes get is fresh ink after Tokyo or after, you know, Pyeongchang. These are examples of open studio type of work. More open studio. People always need photos. The girl on the left, I told her, I said, you need to do photos. And she goes, I don't want to. And then after the first photo shoot we did, I created a monster. She can't get enough. Trying different things, indoors, outdoors. This was actually a requested one. And I love that photo. I think that's one of my best ones ever. If anybody's ever heard of her, that's Wickenheiser. And then I started in the gym. I started doing photos with the athletes, just headshots against a wall, natural light, post training, like right when they're done training. I will do photos of them like that, and just to show what they look like, what the daily grind is like. So those are my personal projects. I'm not a wildlife guy. I'm not a landscape guy. By the time I'm done with the day, I just want to put the camera down. But so I integrate my personal projects into what I actually do. So yeah.
Awesome. Well, we have a message here from Sport Calgary, who collaborated with us to put this event on and to invite a lot of the members who have joined us today. And they just said that they love the work that you do in promoting Calgary's and Canada's athletes. So it's very much appreciated. And yeah, did you have any final tips or words that you wanted to share with our viewers? Just
do what you like. There's nothing I hate more than shooting stuff that I don't want to shoot. It just saps the life out of me. So find what you want to shoot. Tried lots of different things like I did, but I always gravitated exactly back to the same place I started with shooting amateur sports. I have no interest really in shooting any professional sports. I like the space that my athletes are in. They're elite athletes, but they pay to do what they do. and I think they deserve that attention. So have fun with what you do, and just keep trying different stuff. That's really it. It's just get out, shoot different things, try different things, and yeah, it's just enjoy yourself.
You know, I'm going to squeeze in one more question from the audience because I think it's
Okay.
a good one. From Chris from Gibbs Media. Is it possible to make a living solely off of sports photography these days, or is it something that is more of a hobby type thing that you can have?
You can do it. It's not easy, that's for sure. It's really all I shoot, but I also get hired by, like, the Calgary Marathon. When World Cups come through, I'll get hired by a biathlon or speed skating or luge to shoot some photos. The COC hires me every once in a while for some things. Canadian Paralympic Committee will hire me when they have events coming through town. So it's slowly building out the network that way to get some things. And then there have been a few commercial opportunities that have come up that will help pay the bills for sure. But it's I recently did one. They called and asked if I could do some photos, and I said, who is it? And they listed them all off, and I said, well, I've done photo shoots with all of them. So it works great that way, because then they have a comfort level with me knowing that I know them, and yeah, it's not easy, but it can be done.
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dave. It's Dave Holland. You can check him out. He has Instagram as well as his website. We'll make sure that we put that in the comments afterwards today. Again, I want to thank Sport Calgary and the team, as well as Katrina, for joining us today. It was fantastic to see all of your virtual faces online. Hopefully we'll be able to see them in person. And if you're in Calgary and you're new to them, make sure you do check out their website and their upcoming one-day and all-sport events that they put on in the city for people to have the opportunity to try new sports. So until next time, we hope that you guys enjoyed today's TCSTV Live. If you like what you saw and you want to check out more virtual content, please make sure that you like and subscribe to our channel. Otherwise, you can check out thecamerastore.com under the events tab to see what we have up next. Until next time, take care.